is Shakaama Politics with your host, Shakaama. I'm going to do several of these videos trying to go into deep analysis. China is in the news for banning Islam, and we're going to explore this monolithic government type, possibly the only or the last true monolithic government type. Even Russia has completely changed its ways internally. Now, China still has Taiwan to contend with, but internally they are a monolithic government that has an iron fist that they wield all over their internal borders, excluding Taiwan and Hong Kong. Now, when China banned Ramadan on its Turkish Muslims population, Muslims globally, including much of the Western media, began to expose the issue with the typical gameplay of victimhood. In reality, in China, Muslims are still allowed to pray, fast, they can go to mosque, even with the restrictions. But what they could not do was go and preach towards non-Islamic villages. And here's the aim, of course, to spread an Islamic revolution throughout China. The Chinese government is no fool. There was some flexibility in terms of following the Islamic way of life, despite the limited resources in terms of scholars and Islamic books. There's also Chinese imams. Yet in recent years, there has been a rise in prohibitions with regards to fasting in some Muslim provinces where there are political unrest. And before I go any further, the fasting that the Muslims say that they do or promote is not the fasting that Christians do. In other words, in China, once Islam begins to start trouble, a ban on Islam is issued in the trouble zone. China is telling Muslims that if you want to fast in Ramadan, it's fine, but if you want to push your revolution, then a Ramadan ban is added as a bonus punishment. In the trouble regions, and there's a documentary specifically on this, a journalist tried to go to one of the trouble regions. As an outside journalist, they didn't quite have any problem with him, but his handlers certainly were heavily warned. China has added several bonus punishments and banned all Muslim civil servants, Muslim students, Muslim teachers, and especially in the Shaanxi province with a large Muslim population in the northwest from fasting during Ramadan. In addition to the ban on fasting, China has ordered restaurants to stay open all day during Ramadan. Here's a quote: "Food service workplaces will operate normal hours during Ramadan." A notice posted on the website of the State Food and Drug Administration said, "Even wearing the hijab in public, including on public transportation and when getting married in religious ceremonies, was banned in 2014, with fines of about $353 for wearing a hijab in public." In China's Muslim troublemaking areas, prohibiting alcohol and smoking and eating halal food is considered radical behavior and is also banned. Wherever there is a Muslim revolution, there's also a ban on Islam. In reality, China is cracking down on Muslims who apply peer pressure and public scorn towards Muslims who decided to smoke or drink alcohol, and many local shopkeepers had stopped selling alcohol and cigarettes since 2012 because they fear public scorn, while many locals had decided to abstain from drinking and smoking as a result of Sharia pushers. But the Chinese government says enough is enough, and it actually gives the freedom for the shopkeepers to carry cigarettes and alcohol, which gives them the excuse to tell the Sharia mafia, "Sorry, but that is a government mandate to allow smoking." This sends a message: you push your Islamic revolution on us, and we will push back to say no Islam altogether. It is sort of like Russia if the homosexual agenda tries to push its agenda on the public. Then Russia does care what goes on in your bedroom and expect a good dose of beating if caught practicing homosexuality. Not my words. In China, doesn't care about all the cryberry complaining. China argues that in Hong Kong, for example, where Muslims cause no trouble, the Muslims in the community there do not have the permissibility to practice religion, but has the freedom to preach it and host lectures for the general public, and is why China has rejected criticism over the fasting ban and says it faces a terrorist threat in Xinjiang, which officials blame on religious extremism for growing violence in the region. If one is in doubt that in China, Muslims have freedom, they can read what Muslims themselves write about their freedom of religion in China, and is why folks need to study instead of reading all the media hype about the game of victimhood and such. If China's ways are applied in the US, it will be the end of Dearborn, including all the crybabies of victimhood from homosexuals, including all the African Americans with a chip on their shoulder, like Jesse Jackson. The game of victimhood has risen sky high in the US since Obama was elected in office. It is strange to think that America is racist when the people twice elected an African American. It is also strange to believe that homosexuals just want to practice their sexuality, and they do not have an agenda to push their lifestyle on children, which, if you look in the news right now, they are now trying to get pedophilia declared as a mental disorder and should not be considered a crime, and that means all pedophilia. With all the hoopla about freedom of religion, try to have Dearborn decide that it is now a Muslim zone and is independent from Michigan and the entire U.S. The Uyghur are separatists who claim that the region, which they refer to as East Turkestan, is not a part of China, but that the Soviet-supported Second East Turkestan Republic, which was incorporated by China in 1949 and has since been under Chinese occupation. The separatist movement is led by Turkic Islamist militant organizations, most notably the Eastern Turkestan Independent Movement against the national government in Beijing. This whole movement starts terror attacks and kill Chinese Huns. Abdullah Mansur, leader of the Uyghur separatist movement, wrote, "We have to conquer our own country and purify it of all infidels. Then we should conquer the infidels' countries and spread Islam. The infidels who are usurping our countries have announced war against Islam and Muslims, forcing Muslims to abandon Islam and change their beliefs." Now, as a heavily educated and psychologist, okay, I won't do any sort of analysis right now, but that right there speaks of a person who is holding on to the last vestige of belief in a system, since the people are in fact leaving Islam. And there's on this website here on youtube.com, on this website, there are entire channels dedicated to people giving confessions of why they left Islam, how much happier they are now, and so on. So while the media hype is up, the so-called persecution of Muslim Chinese Americans need to learn the difference between real persecution and the play of victimhood, which they see in their backyards. Turkey says it has conveyed deep concerns to China over reports that minority Chinese Uyghur Muslims were being prevented from worship and fasting during the Muslim month of Ramadan. In a mildly worded statement issued, the Turkish Foreign Ministry said that the Turkish public was saddened by the report that Turkish concerns were relayed to the Chinese ambassador in Ankara. While Turkey has close cultural ties to the Uyghurs, but it also is keen to maintain good relations with China. Tell me what you think about that. Thank you for watching the Shakaama Politics.